Today we are going to study how the hand functions. You see, this is the hand. Here is the wrist joint, and here is the forearm, which puts this hand into a position of function, or puts the hand near the object of action. This action of the whole upper extremity is called as the prehensile function. Now the hand basically moves at a carpo-metacarpal joint. Normally you see this thumb is at 90 degrees to the plane of the finger. But if I rotate the metacarpal, then the movement of the thumb, flexion of the thumb, will start opposing the flexion of the finger. So this rotation of the at the carpo-metacarpal joint, rotation of the metacarpal at the carpo-metacarpal joint is referred to as opponence. And there are two things that can do opponence: the thumb and the little finger, to some extent. So when both the opponents contract, then you can see that there is cupping of the hand. Alright. So MP flexion, opponents of the pollex and the digiti minimi lead to cupping. Okay. So this is at the carpo-metacarpal joint. Now when you see these joints, this comes the metacarpal here, and it articulates with the phalanx like this. Now the phalanx is notched. Therefore, because of this notch, there can be only flexion extension at the interphalangeal joint, and also flexion extension at the distal interphalangeal joint. So the PIP and the DIP joints can flex and extend. See, proximal phalanx is a ball and socket joint. Therefore, it can flex, it can extend, it can abduct, it can adduct. Any movement of the finger towards the middle finger is called as adduction. Both are adduction. But the middle finger would move only away from it. So both the movements of the middle finger are abduction. So this is the nomenclature of the movements that can occur at the metacarpophalangeal joint. Metacarpophalangeal joint. And I have told you that at the base, where this articulates with the carpal, it can also internally rotate, and this movement is called as opponence. So we have to first understand what causes opponence. This is opponens digiti minimi, and here the muscle which gets attached to the metacarpal, this metacarpal like this, is opponens pollicis. Besides this, there can be abduction by abductor digiti minimi, flexion by flexor digiti minimi. Same way, abduction of the thumb is abductor pollicis, and you have two of these, longus and brevis. You see, the thumb, when it is adducted would be abducted by extensor pollicis brevis, like this. But when it is in opponens, then the abductor pollicis longus winds round the Lister's tubercle and comes to the thumb, and it will cause abduction when the thumb is abducted. Then the extensor pollicis longus would be able to extend it. In flexion, in adduction, extensor pollicis brevis would be able to extend it. So there is the abductor pollicis longus and brevis, and there is the extensor pollicis longus and brevis. Then we move to the flexor of the MP joints. The flexor of the MP joints would extend the PIP and DIP joint. Now you see, this is the metacarpal head, this is the phalanx, proximal phalanx, this is the intermediate phalanx, and this is the distal phalanx. You find that the flexor digitorum profundus goes and gets attached here, and flexor digitorum superficialis comes like this, splits into two and gets attached to this phalanx. Therefore, the flexion of the distal phalanx is produced by the flexor digitorum profundus, and of the PIP joint is produced by FDS, flexor digitorum superficialis. So you want to test the flexor digitorum superficialis, you arrest the distal interphalangeal joint, then you will not be able to flex this joint, and you can get flexion at PIP joint only. Flexion at PIP joint only. Now there is a muscle which arises out of flexor digitorum profundus, crosses the MP joint anteriorly, so it flexes the MP joint, and when it goes behind, it goes and gets inserted into the extensor expansion. So this is the extensor expansion, and this extensor expansion is inserted into the distal phalanx and also into the proximal phalanx. So when the lumbricals contract, they flex the PIP joint and extend the PIP. They flex the MP joint and they extend the PIP and DIP joint. So flex the MP joint and extend the PIP and the DIP joint. Opposite of this lumbrical paralysis, you have this, which is extension of MP joint and flexion of PIP and DIP joint, and this is called as claw head. Now if the FDP is also, flexor digitorum profundus is also paralyzed, as in high ulnar nerve paralysis, then this clawing would decrease, and that is called as the ulnar paradox. It's called as ulnar paradox. A low ulnar nerve paralysis would paralyze only the lumbricals and will produce a complete claw head. But a high ulnar nerve paralysis will paralyze the flexor digitorum profundus of the third and the fourth finger. Therefore, the claw hand would decrease. Normally, higher paralysis should increase the deformity. Here, the higher paralysis is decreasing the deformity, and that is why this is called as ulnar paradox. The extensor tendons, there is extensor digiti minimi, there is extensor indicis, and there is extensor digitorum, which is shared by all four fingers. So extensor digiti minimi, extensor indicis, and extensor digitorum. These tendons would extend the MP joint. Now, what causes adduction or abduction at the metacarpophalangeal joint? The thumb and the little finger has its own abductors, pollicis longus and brevis, abductor pollicis, abductor digiti minimi. So, MP joint abduction of the digit of the first and the fifth digit is separate. Now, the rest of the joints are adducted and abducted by muscles that lie between the metacarpals, and they are called as interossei. And there's one palmar interossei and there's one dorsal interossei. The palmar interossei are adductors, pad, and the dorsal interossei are abductors, dab. Therefore, supposing I want the palmar interossei of this, so it will go and adduct this finger. And supposing I am talking about the dorsal interossei between the space, it will abduct this finger. And since the middle finger has to be adducted, it will be adducted by the palmar interossei of this, and the middle finger will be abducted by two dorsal interossei, because this movement and this movement both are abduction. Similarly, the interosseous of this would abduct the index finger. The thumb has its own adductor, and that is called as adductor pollicis. Now we will name the muscles that you can see from the dorsum of the hand. So the lateral most are two tendons, which are abductor pollicis longus on this side and extensor pollicis brevis. They go and come and get attached to the thumb like this. Then you have the two tendons getting attached to metacarpals, which is extensor carpi radialis longus and extensor carpi radialis brevis. So then there is a Lister's tubercle here, from which comes the extensor pollicis longus and goes and gets attached here. And this in between is called as the snuff box, bounded by EPL, abductor pollicis longus, abductor pollicis brevis, and extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis. Now, this tendon is particularly liable for stenosing tenosynovitis, which is also called as de Quervain's disease. After you have understood the snuff box, it's very simple. Extensor indicis, extensor digitorum, and extensor digiti minimi. And on this side, extensor carpi ulnaris. So this is from the dorsal side. Now we'll quickly draw a section and place all these muscles, intrinsic and extrinsic. So we draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 metacarpals. We place the palmar and dorsal interossei here, the pad dab muscles, and as there is no adductor of the thumb is separate, so we place only a dorsal interosseous in the first web space. Then we place the adductor of the thumb, adductor pollicis, and then we place the three muscles, the thenar and hypothenar. This side, the little finger, hypothenar, opponens, flexor, abductor digiti minimi, opponens, flexor, abductor pollicis. And here, of course, the opponents, except the opponents, the abductor and the flexor are brevis. The longus is separate. As soon we place the abductor digitorum brevis, we place the tendon of abductor pollicis longus. Then we place the palmar epinodosis here. We drop the intermediate septum, and then we place the flexor pollicis longus tendon here, the flexor digitorum superficialis here, 4 tendons, and flexor digitorum profundus here. Then we go on to place, with the abductor pollicis longus we have extensor pollicis brevis. Then we have the extensor pollicis longus coming from this side. Then we have extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis, extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis. Then we have the extensor indicis and extensor digiti minimi and the 4 tendons of extensor digitorum longus. And finally we have extensor carpi ulnaris on the 5th metacarpal. Now attached to the extensor expansion coming from the profundus, we have a muscle which is called as the lumbricus. So you learn drawing this, and of course on this side you have the hypothenar fascia and you have a muscle which is called as palmaris brevis. So you have been able to thus name all the muscles that form the hand and the forearm, and most of them you see are either named because of their place or because of their action. For example, flexor carpi ulnaris would flex the wrist and ulna deviated, and some muscles, for example lumbricals, are named by their position. They are the musician's muscles. They are very peculiar because they flex the MP joint and extend the PIP DIP joint, and their paralysis causes the famous claw hand. Since the 3rd, 4th lumbrical are supplied by the ulnar nerve and the 1st, 2nd by the median nerve, that's why ulnar nerve paralysis would cause only the clawing of the little and the ring finger, the 3rd and the 4th finger, and this is called as ulnar claw hand. Thank you.